All right, we are back for another episode, and today we have our super fun guest, Erin Crawford, on. She is a fellow coach and friend of ours. I don't know, have you met Amanda before?
I don't think so.
Okay, you haven't met Amanda. Okay, so she's me, Erin, and Carolyn all met together at a conference in 2020. And then we've just known each other since. But we have Erin on today to talk about postpartum journey, and getting back into competing, just being healthy through that. And she has like a really good story herself. So I guess to start off everything, we're just really informal here, but just tell us a little bit about yourself, Erin, for everyone who's listening, and just
Okay.
kind of start with your story of how you got into training to begin with.
Well, first, thanks so much for having me on. It's so, it definitely takes me back 5 years to meeting you guys in the height of the world going crazy. And so it's been so awesome to watch, all three of our lives completely evolve since that point. Um, Well, so for me, to take things way back, I am a four-time cervical cancer survivor, and all of that hit in my early 20s. I'm almost 40 now, and um, it and that was after a very like unhealthy, sick childhood. I grew up literally only on fast food. I was always sick, always on antibiotics, always on pharmaceuticals. And so it almost came as no surprise, really, when I ended up with recurrent cancer. And it was really with the fourth diagnosis that I was like, I keep doing everything the medical world tells me to do, and I keep ending up right back here. So I kind of took things into my own hands and really started studying nutrition. What is cancer and why is cancer happen and why does it happen? And really, just from that point, it was just a big launching point for me of completely changing my life. And so from there, fast forward, 10 years, and I have done. Hi.
Hey, sorry
And
about that.
here's Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. Nice to meet you.
You too. I literally started logged in and then it was like, please hold while we're updating Zoom. I was like, you've got to be
Every
kidding me.
time. I
Every
swear, it's
time.
every time it drives me
Yeah.
nuts. It's like, why does this app need to update like daily? I don't understand.
Seriously. I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
uh, so fast forward like a good 10 years, I was what I consider like the healthiest I'd ever been. And at that time, I started dating a bodybuilder. and and then also there was just this funny thing that had happened at my job where my boss, after this big day of a lot of physical activity and stuff, and I was working with nothing but guys, and my boss was like, everybody drop and do 50. And I here I am thinking that I'm so healthy because I'm the thinnest that I'd ever been, right? And all of this. And so I go to take on these guys and do push-ups. Well, I managed one. I managed one push-up, and I was just like, oh, okay. So I'm skinny. I'm not fit. I'm not, and also that was like kind of a light bulb moment of me going, I'm weak, and I'm weak in my 20s, and I'm about to turn 30, and I need to get ahead of this. And so next thing you know, I hire a coach and dive in deep, and really just started ramping up on all my own certifications and everything. And that's also when I became a personal trainer myself. And so it all just kept evolving like this. Um, and before I knew it, I was gonna compete. I like that had never been something I set out to do, but I fell in love with fitness, and I only continued to feel better and better and better than I even already had been for the last several years from my cancer healing journey. And so, and as competing tends to do, it totally stole my heart. It became my passion, and then from there, so here I was, really specialized at that time. I was working with a lot of women on hormonal issues and that kind of thing, and it's really started to stand out to me how if you optimize hormones, you can optimize fitness. And so I really started to kind of combine the two different passions, and then things have just continued to take off from there. Now, with everything that I had gone through as a cancer survivor, I had been told since I was 21 that I would not have kids. And here I was helping all these other families have their dreams come true of having children when they were told that it wouldn't be possible, all through various nutritional and lifestyle healing techniques. Um, and so I had done a very long competition season, went to nationals, and it was definitely a hard competition year. And I came out of that competition in some pretty bad. I came out of that competition season.
That was 2021, right?
That was 2021. Yes.
Because we all did junior nationals together. I think
Yes, we
you guys
did.
did meet because we all three, Erin, Amanda, and I did junior nationals together
Yes.
that same year. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so I came out of that because I did like an 8-month prep. And so I came out of that just depleted. And my labs were pretty alarming. I hadn't seen my labs be bad like that since my early 20s and when I had cancer. And so I just launched into this like hardcore several months of kind of healing regimen again, very much like I had done for cancer. And then one day I had a positive pregnancy test. And now, fast forward a couple more years, and I have a beautiful, just absolutely beautiful, healthy, active 2.5-year-old, well, past almost 3 now, and he is just the light of my life. So that is all of that in a teeny tiny nutshell, because I feel like I could tell so much more about the depths of where I went with the different versions of the healing and whatnot that I've done. But it has just been my greatest pleasure, really, to continue to be able to take what I am passionate about and help others experience their best lives and their healthiest lives, and to take them from feeling like there's no hope and they won't have what they've always dreamed of having to having what they've always dreamed of having. And so, yeah. And so thanks for having me here to talk about that today.
Of course. Yeah, we just wanted to make sure that everyone got kind of a brief overview. Like clearly we could go into every single step
So
of
much.
your
There's so much
process
there.
because there's so much to it. But yeah, like essentially you've been through a lot and like you've overcome a lot too. So it's cool that you can walk the walk along with what you preach to your clients, and I believe so we're going to focus mostly on the postpartum part with competing and whatnot. Because you have lost what, over 100 pounds postpartum now?
So, with the type of cervical procedures that I had done, I knew that I was at risk with my pregnancy of miscarriage, because essentially I'm missing most of my cervix, and that's essentially what holds the baby in.
Right.
And so like literally the day I found out I was pregnant, I had to go through drastic changes because I couldn't build like internal pelvic pressure much at all, because that could end the pregnancy. And so I went from, hardcore competition type of training to essentially some walking and some seated exercises, and talk about like really, really, really lowering my weight and intensity and that kind of stuff. So, of course, when your body goes through a major shift like that, I put on a lot more weight than I would have liked to have put on in my pregnancy. But I knew, I was like, there is an end in sight to this, and I can tackle that when it's appropriate. And I am a big believer in breastfeeding and all of that. So I knew that that would be a part of my journey as well. And with breastfeeding, it's equivalent to running 6 miles a day to produce that milk. So if someone is going to breastfeed, they really shouldn't diet. And at the end of the day, because I am also a hair test mineral analysis provider and a root cause practitioner, I am very well aware, just from my work over the years, that a woman is actually more physiologically at risk in her postpartum time than she is even during pregnancy. And so I knew going in that it didn't matter how uncomfortable I felt in my skin, having put on all this weight, I was not going to just dive head first into dieting, the second baby was out. I was going to prioritize essentially replenishing me. A woman does lose 75 to 85% of her entire mineral stores from her bones, teeth, brain, liver, all of that in just the third trimester alone. And that is why so many women come out of pregnancy with major like dental issues, major thyroid issues. And so I've said, I'm just going to get ahead of that. So I never dieted for the entire first year postpartum. Now, I went through some personal stuff in the first few months postpartum, like my dog died unexpectedly in my arms, on the day my son turned 3 months old, and that had been my baby for 12 years. And so there were definitely some hard times in that first year postpartum. And I knew that it would only further stress my body out if I were to say, oh, I'm just going to, go straight back to trying to train like I'm competing or diet hardcore. So I wouldn't diet, and I very slowly got back into training. And so yes, but it was quite the journey because I ended up putting on about 50 pounds in my pregnancy. I'm now down since my pregnancy about 110 though.
That's amazing.
So I feel like, although it may have been slow, and there were definitely the days where my inner critic was like, I can't even look in the mirror today.
Right.
I know for a fact that I and my son are both healthier now because of making those hard calls.
Yeah. Taking the time to do that versus just trying to jump into something, clearly you had other like previous issues with like having cervical cancer that you had to take into account as well. But, I guess for the average person who doesn't have those issues, how long would you say would be a good time to let yourself like heal from pregnancy before you kind of jump into everything again?
So that is going to come down to several different factors. How active were they before pregnancy and during pregnancy, and what kind of muscle mass do they already have, and are they breastfeeding or not? Those kinds of things. But also, how are they sleeping? Because my son I did not have a good night of sleep for 26 months, and so if you're not sleeping, you really don't need to further stress your body with dieting or trying to, do this high intensity exercise, that kind of thing. But in general, so for instance, with all of my fertility clients, so many of them, when they end up pregnant, end up staying with me as a client throughout their pregnancy to help them make sure they have the healthiest pregnancy possible. Most of my clients maybe gain 17, 20 pounds in pregnancy, maybe. And then they have a 9-pound baby, and then they have 9 pounds to lose, and so not too shabby, right? But even in those cases, I'm like, it will come off. It will come off. So pregnancy is broken down into trimesters, and there is something known as the fourth trimester, which is essentially your first 3 months postpartum.
Okay.
That is definitely, because unfortunately, today's modern OBGYNs are like, all right, 6 weeks postpartum, good to go. And it's like, actually, it takes your body about a year to bounce back from the physical challenges of pregnancy. And so you want to, especially if you're breastfeeding, you want to make sure you're keeping up calories. But as far as jumping back into workouts, sure, get back into some walks after, the first I'd say the first 4, 5, 6 weeks. But give yourself until the end at the minimum of that fourth trimester, so that means at least 3 months postpartum before you try resistance training, before you try any type of high intensity anything. What so many people don't realize is that your uterus just went from this size to about this size, and it's going to take it a good 6 months to shrink back down. So while that 6 months is passing, all of your other organs got displaced. All of them, including even your lungs. You can't even breathe that great. And so everything is moving back into place. On top of that, when the placenta comes out with the baby, it leaves a dinner-sized wound because that placenta was attached to the inside of the uterine wall. So when it gets ripped off, that is essentially a wound that's about this big, and it's going to take it 6-9 weeks to heal, truly. That's why so many women come out of postpartum and will bleed for 3 months, and that's just more depletion. And now some women will come out of will give birth and stop bleeding in 2 weeks. It's just, everybody is so different. But at the end of the day, you really need to replenish what you have just given away from your body, and heal up actual wounds. And even so, say somebody has a C-section, that is one of the most hardcore surgeries that you can go through. It is literally your body being cut in half, and your entire abdominals being separated. And so all of that needs to heal. Or for instance, say you rip when you give birth, and there are tiny, tiny tears, and then there are some really bad, severe tears that can even rip all the way up the anus. And so it really just comes down to the person. But at the end of the day, you have to take into account like healing it, because your body has just gone through its ultimate marathon that it will ever go through. Yeah.
Kayla's
That's
baby.
hardcore.
Women are amazing. Women are incredible. That's all I can say. When I'm in the gym and around all these big guys, and I'm just like, yeah, I'd like to see you give birth.
Yeah, I got Kayla's face. Like, one of my best friends of all time is a bikini pro and a nurse, and like full-time nurse. Like that's what she does. And she had a baby, and he's, getting bigger now. Like I think he's, oh my gosh, a little over 1 now. But I remember her talking me through a lot of this stuff, and I was just like, girl, I don't even know how you're doing this. Like, she was deadlifting up until like a couple weeks before she gave birth.
Good for her.
Feeling.
That's the thing though. Like if I hadn't been forced to not lift, like I would have been totally that woman in there with the big old belly and in her sports bra and doing my squats. It's so important for pregnant women to work out too. I want to say,
because I have a client that got pregnant like shortly after her prep, and it wasn't necessarily like they're starting to talk about like this is going to be in our future, and then she just got pregnant, and they're like, okay,
they're just like sooner than we thought, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is the healthiest prep I've ever had. I can't believe like my hormones came back that fast.
That's awesome.
So it's like, yeah, just when you're fit before, like when you're in good shape beforehand, and then that's what I've noticed with both of them, like my best friend and then my client, is they're able to kind of get back to training, and they're able to really just navigate that postpartum phase physically with a little bit more ease. Because I hate saying like get back to your previous body, because I don't think that's the right kind of language.
You'll never get back to your previous body.
Everything's different, and that's an incredible thing. Honestly, I've heard a lot of women say that like after having children, they can build muscle easier. Like they actually prefer their physique, and there's so many benefits. That's why I try to tell them like, dude, you're building a new physique now. Like, but it just want to navigate that postpartum period with a little bit more ease, just having that foundation.
Yeah.
Carolyn, do you have any questions yet?
You said
no, I thought you were yeah.
I know, I'm sitting over here as Erin's like explaining that, and I'm like, oh, ooh. And I'm like, oh man.
So I'm a birth doula too. And so
you are? That's awesome.
All 4 of us talk to our clients all the time about bowel movements, right?
Right.
And so it is no big deal to us to talk about poop at all, but to like the layman, they're like, are you really talking to me about poop? That's how I am when it comes to anything birth related, because I just talk about it all the time. So those who don't talk about it all the time, I see it on your faces. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. I'm shocking you with things that are just everyday to me that are not everyday to you.
Oh yeah.
What's what people need to hear?
Yeah, 100%. It can happen.
One thing I want to bring up is the importance of pelvic floor health. And actually, like, if your pelvic floor health isn't even good to begin with, it can actually make it harder to get pregnant. And so pelvic floor health is vitally important for every woman. But if you do want to get pregnant, go ahead and start seeing a pelvic floor therapist. If you are pregnant, go ahead and start seeing a pelvic floor therapist. And if you have had a baby, I can promise you some things are out of whack. So see a pelvic floor therapist.
I actually have a client that is going to see a pelvic floor therapist now because she's, I can't remember how old her little girl is, but she's a little, like she's a toddler at least now, 4 to 6. I think she's about 4. But she's been having some issues, and we kind of thought it was maybe like, well, the doctors were saying endometriosis, and then she went and got checked, and I looked at her labs, and I was like, this doesn't look like endo, and she gets a little like bloated sometimes, and they looked at her and they're like, oh, you just have poor pelvic floor health, and so they're getting her to go do that. And I think that's going to help a lot. We've also been supporting her in other ways too, but yeah, so she's like 4 years past postpartum, of course, but she's still having those issues now. So that's
So there are even like, because you can have ab separation from
yep, diastasis
pregnancy,
recti.
especially when your belly gets really big. You can literally start pelvic floor therapy when your kid is like 10 and bring those abs back together. So
Oh wow.
talk about, it is incredible. And of course, the sooner the better. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just goes to show that like not every single like bloating issue that you're having is necessarily gut related even or anything like that. So this was an issue that was from years ago. So
there can definitely be a structural component for sure.
So it's really interesting to see all that. I guess like going off of that, when women want to get back into competing after having a baby, because I mean, we've seen all sorts of things from, I think I said earlier, like 2 weeks after, I'm like, I'm back in the gym and I'm 9 months postpartum now, and now I'm getting ready and to step on stage in 2 weeks, like real fast. And so what would you say with that?
Well, first, I'm not trying to piss off anybody here, you know, like,
Erin, that's your specialty.
my specialty is truth. That's all. Some people don't like
that. It's science.
But I'm really not trying to piss off anybody. I'm going to guess, for instance, that Amanda's friend, who is a pro, was probably back in it pretty quickly. And I'm not like getting on her or anything like that. But you have to live with your body for the rest of your life. And you essentially are put into a state of like osteoporosis in your 3rd trimester. And it can take a good year, 2 years. So many people, that's the other thing. The term postpartum is so often thrown around like it only refers to those first few weeks after giving birth. But technically, it is the first 2 years post-labor. And that's per child. And so, with all that said, ideally, if for optimal lifelong health, give yourself that good first year of not dieting. Start getting active again about 3, 4, 5, 6 months postpartum, depending on how things went for you. If you had surgery, if you tore, blah, blah, blah. Start getting active again and incrementally increase the intensity and the weight you're lifting and all of that. And then I started dieting again, like the weekend after my son turned 1, and my body responded. And that's one thing. So many women start trying to diet immediately and their bodies hormonally freak out, because also that's another thing. Your body stops making hormones when you're pregnant, and the placenta takes that over by week 12 of pregnancy. And so when that placenta comes out and leaves a big wound that needs to heal, well, now you just went from a 3,000 plus level of estrogen to a 0 level of estrogen in 48 hours. And your body needs time to be able to recover and remember how to even make hormones. So it's very much like what we see with so many of our clients who are on birth control and then come off birth control, and their bodies literally are like, oh, I have to do this myself now because you've been supplying me the hormones. Well, the placenta has been supplying the hormones, and now the body has to relearn. So ideally, you would incrementally, slowly increase activity levels, and you can definitely see some major body recomp and whatnot from that. And then if you are going to diet, about that year postpartum is kind of the magic mark. Yeah.
Okay. And of course, this is no absolute. This is just
there's no absolutes when it comes to human beings.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that just needs to be reiterated, because a lot of people think like this is just the absolute black and white. That's how it is. But again, like a pro athlete versus like an everyday just average person is going to be much different in their pace of getting back into it. So,
100%.
what are
But
some,
if you
oh, go
can
ahead.
give yourself more time, you will only benefit from it.
Right.
Yeah.
Kayla, what were
You
you
guys
gonna
have
say?
any- I was just going to say, I had another question, but if you guys have one, you can go.
No, I'll save
Go
mine.
for
You
it.
go.
Okay. I was just going to say, when you are in that phase of coming postpartum, then that year, I mean, we all know about lab work, of course, but like, what are some other things? Is there certain markers you look at, or certain, like every 4 months or something that you recommend getting lab work? Like what
Every
kind of
3 to
things
4
there do you look at?
months, especially in those first 2 years postpartum, because things can change so rapidly. When
Yep.
you're pregnant, your body has to make 4 times more thyroid hormone because your baby is running off your thyroid. Their thyroid
Right.
doesn't start working for them until they are no longer attached to you.
Okay.
And so they are running off your thyroid. So something like one out of every 2 women come out of pregnancy with thyroid issues, thyroid disease, this kind of stuff. So I definitely like to keep a close eye on thyroid. I definitely am a big believer in hair test mineral analysis about every 6 to 12 months postpartum. Starting and doing your first one at about 3 months postpartum, just because your body just got wiped out. And when it comes to minerals are at the end of the day the very root of everything. Minerals run your digestion and your brain and your liver and your gallbladder, and so many women, something like, I think it is 1/4 of gallbladder surgeries are in postpartum women. And yeah, and so anyway, minerals are so vitally important for replenishment and essentially not being afraid to eat. Like, don't be afraid to eat and eat real good healthy food. Unfortunately, yes, your cravings are going to go crazy as your body starts to remake hormones, and just like through the menstrual cycle, how cravings can go up and down. It's like you definitely feel it even more postpartum. But also, like, for instance, postpartum depression. That is very often a side effect of depletion. And postpartum depression can be deadly. I unfortunately know 2 people who took their lives in just the past year, even though they were so absolutely in love with their new babies and this new family, but they just could not get past that. But they also didn't make it a priority to eat well or to move their bodies during pregnancy and after pregnancy. And so, well, shoot, I feel like I forgot the original question, but
It was just how long in between to get testing, and then like if there's
so for
anything
the testing,
specific to test for labs.
I start looking at, I like to give it a good 6 months before you start diving hardcore into hormones again, just because your body
It's gonna take
things
time.
are all over the place anyway, that you'll just kind of waste money testing hormones constantly, especially immediately. But go ahead and start testing things like thyroid, minerals. And unfortunately, you don't get an accurate look at minerals via blood testing. That is where hair test mineral analysis comes in. So important. Very often, especially postpartum, women are told they're anemic, but actually they have iron overload in their liver. But you don't know that if you're only testing blood. And then iron overload in the liver is very oxidizing and aging. Let's see. So those are the kind of things that I really like harp on postpartum for sure.
Okay.
Actually,
Yeah.
I have a question, unless Amanda, did you want to go?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So on depression, you and I have talked about previously about the benefits of taking saffron and creatine. How much do you think a woman postpartum should be taking on creatine?
On creatine,
Yeah.
gosh, probably in that first year, probably like 10 grams a day.
Oh, they
Right,
need 10.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, because again, just she's so depleted.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you can get a creatine from your diet too, if you've got, plenty of red meat and that kind of stuff coming in. But bone marrow is a really good one to have postpartum.
Mhm.
But it's still like, it will come down to gut health, how much you're absorbing of that and that kind of thing. So you might as well supplement it too.
Mhm.
And it's the science is pretty solid on creatine in babies now. And like And even there's just been this new study that just came out in the past couple of weeks showing that kids who have higher creatine levels grow taller. Like, and so it's interesting. Yeah.
I clearly did not have that when I was born.
I was wondering what you would have to say about that.
Good to know if I decide to get pregnant at one point.
It's just like white powder.
Now, you had mentioned saffron, Carolyn.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, out there in the research, it hasn't really been studied postpartum, but they don't really study much of anything postpartum.
No. Well, it's even amazing if we get a female study.
Right,
So
exactly.
yeah, because the creatine studies were only on men originally.
But I will say this, personal experience, anecdotal experience here, especially with all that I went through from about 3 to 9 months postpartum on a personal level. I started taking saffron for depression, anxiety type of stuff. And I never had any negative side effects from it. Now, I have had one single client who also took it because she had major postpartum depression. Like, I was worried she might harm herself. And it worked so good for her depression, anxiety, all of that. But then she started having major gut issues. Well, she had a bunch of biofilms and didn't know it. And saffron can actually start to work on biofilm. And so it actually started to have a more negative impact on her life just because she was in so much gut distress. And I was like, let's bring this in once you're done breastfeeding. But it did its short-term job in helping like lift the fog for her. And that was good. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because
be careful with
personal.
herbs. Herbs they can be absolutely amazing. But also like there are so many herbs you cannot have if you're breastfeeding. Like I can't have sage right now. So yeah, you just have to be careful. That's all.
But we can use it as a home incense.
Yes. Yes.
Like,
But that was a thing too, because sage was so beneficial last year, particularly. So adding that in, but I'm really glad that you did mention about the gut health because with the biofilm, because that's something that's often overlooked as well, is we have to look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
What other supplements are you taking too? So even just taking everything out and just doing beef liver and focusing on that and the heart and soil supplements and just overhauling and just taking a break
My
can really
favorite
help someone.
My favorite of the beef organs is the heart and soil, histamine, and immune for postpartum. Because as your body starts to remake its estrogen, and when estrogen goes up, very often histamine will go up. And what is so cool about the placenta when you are pregnant is that so you're in a really high estrogen state, so you could have major histamine issues. And there are some histamine pregnancy issues that are pretty common. But the placenta pumps out antihistamines the whole time you're pregnant. But then that placenta is removed. So there's usually that postpartum, that first year postpartum, there can be a lot of histamine issues, which can affect gut, mental health, anxiety, all of that. So yeah, just one of those things to be aware of. And the microbiome goes through a major overhaul during pregnancy and postpartum too, because you literally run out of room for food. And of course, as you start to, it's like the actual shape and where your stomach is located and all of that gets moved around, like the bacterial balance in there is drastically changed. And that's why so many women also have like bad acid reflux issues and that kind of thing too. Yeah.
This is all really fascinating.
It's so fascinating.
I'm like, wow.
Women are incredible. Again, I would love to see a man do this.
Amanda, what was your question?
oh my gosh, I know. Is it okay if I ask a birth control question, or is this just like, okay?
I feel like when we're talking postpartum and pregnant, and we're just talking all things female, like
Yeah,
all things female.
because I don't know what it is about recently. I've run across this so many times, specifically with Mirena, especially competitors that either have it and are having a hard time, or get it removed and have a hell of a time. And then
Yes.
some people, it's not like, and I know there's a lot of individual variability. Like some people come off birth control and they're fine, you know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
some people come off and they're like, I should have never done this. And they were having some issues before. And then it just, so yeah, I would just like, I mean, I say Mirena specifically because that's the one I see used the most often, I think, because it's more androgen dominant, how it derives, but just kind of navigating bodybuilding and that, and just women's health and that.
So I actually, my last client check-in of the day is a client I've been working with for a year. And she and her husband are going to start officially trying to get pregnant in about 3 months from now. But she came to me on birth control, and I was just flat out and honest with her. And I said, it's because birth control just depletes you. It just depletes you. So you don't want to go into a state of depletion already depleted. And so I personally, anytime someone comes to me on birth control and they do want to get pregnant, like sooner than later, I say, give yourself 1 year. So she came off birth control about a year ago. We have just been working on her health, getting her more and more active. She's put on a ton of muscle in this past year. So she's really set herself up now for a healthy pregnancy. So that is kind of my, like, give it a year kind of thing. And in fact, on that note, there's a new book that is absolutely incredible. I've actually got some content that I'll be posting soon about a lot of the things that this goes over, but it's called 9 Months is Not Enough. And it talks about how, like, essentially, if you want to get pregnant and have a baby, start working on it a year in advance. Yeah. Especially if you're coming off birth control, especially.
Because I feel like I've had clients in the past, they're not trying to get pregnant, but they want to come off of it just because of all the things they've heard about it. And I've had clients consider it and then not out of fear, because they're like, because I tell them, like, first of all, I'm not a total expert in this. You have to talk to your doctor. And there's a lot of individual variability with coming off birth control. It could be fine. It could be hellacious. I can't sit there and tell you. And I know people that have gained like 15, 20 pounds. And then they're like, I'm just going to get it put back in. I can't handle this anymore. And then it's just like kicking the rock down the road.
It is. It's just prolonging the inevitable.
Can you, I'm just curious for myself, like, and if you don't know, obviously.
No, it's
like,
okay. I'll try to answer as well as I can.
What would cause something like that to happen? Like, just from trying to understand from like a pathway standpoint, like someone, gets their IUD removed, and then is that the body just trying to regulate itself? Like when there's weight gain and acne and all this other stuff
So
going on.
IUD is different than hormonal birth control, of course, well, there's the copper IUD, there's hormonal IUD, but IUDs tend to mostly work by intentionally causing extreme inflammation, like literally lighting the uterus on fire so that it cannot sustain life. And so when you pretty much intentionally inflame your body to a drastic point, your body's going to have to go through healing to come down from that. And as with any type of healing protocol, whether somebody is trying to heal from colitis, or say they had long COVID or anything along those lines, like well, first off, all birth control stops your body from absorbing B vitamins, from absorbing zinc, from absorbing, magnesium, and all of these things are kind of what builds a baby and what builds your health. And so, but it's kind of like, what's the best way to put it? It's almost hidden behind the birth control that you're so depleted, and a lot of people don't realize just how depleted they are till that's removed. And that, like, so with the weight gain as a good example, that probably had a lot to do with the hormonal, hormones going crazy, because when you're on hormonal birth control, you are telling your body, hey, don't make this because I'm supplying it. And now your body is like, oh, I don't have hormones. Oh, I have to remember how to do this. And with any type of big hormonal ups and downs, even with like just what we see in competitors, like going into prep and coming out of prep and then, reversing and that kind of thing, there's going to be some metabolic body fat gain, that kind of thing, that you kind of have to get through the hard part to get to the good part.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of thinking it was.
Yes.
It was like, it's always so hard because I understand, like, that's why I tread this area very lightly, and I say
Yeah.
like, hey, because I know in my head, like, birth control destroyed my fertility. Like, I know what it did to me, and I also understand that everyone's different, and I'm not just gonna go out here and bang on the gongs that no one take birth control, because that's
I'm 99% sure it played a, because I went on birth control for non-birth control reasons at 14.
me too.
And so I was on it for a majority of my hormonal years. Oh, and then I had a hormonal cancer. So I will be completely honest in that, like, I completely believe you that it destroyed your fertility, because I am pretty sure that it played a large role in me even having cancer. And then I had to heal from that, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, and it's that's why, and like what you went through just sounds like I can't even imagine. Like you, like obviously a huge testament to your strength just as a woman, and then going back and then having a child and navigating all of that and being like, okay, here we go. It's just like, I try to be so careful to not just make blanket statements and not
Same.
talk my scope, but at the same time in my mind, I'm like, man, I just wish women would look at other possible options like cycle tracking or anything else before they just start pumping themselves full of a steroid. Essentially, it's just using
It's a
female
steroid.
hormones to the steroid. And I'm like, and I see, but then I've known like friends and people I've known and even clients that are like contemplating it, and then they do it, and then they're like, I should have never come off this birth control. I'm like, well, you're just gonna be on it for forever? Like, your body has to level out. Your body's not broken without birth control. Like, it's
Right.
just, it impacts everybody so differently. And for myself, it was probably 4 or 5 years of hell to regulate. Because I was on Yaz, the one with all the commercials. Like, if you had a pulmonary embolism and you died, like, call this
Yeah.
stuff.
Right. Contact us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've not ovulated properly since. I've been on thyroid and HRT medications ever since I was like
Well, we
22.
have to remember, I mean, that's the point of birth control, is to make you not ovulate,
Yeah,
and unfortunately, our how much we ovulate is even directly tied to our lifespan. And yeah, I mean, I can go down a whole rabbit hole, but here's what I tell clients, because like me, I'm a perfect example. My doctor said to do it and I did it. Like, we should be able to trust that we are going to make informed decisions from our providers, but the unfortunate fact is that our providers aren't even informed. Not in the grand majority. There are some really good ones too, especially as functional medicine is getting to be more and more of a thing. But unfortunately, like, it's just a bad system. And we can't beat ourselves up for that. But when our bodies need healing, if we try to stop that or try to avoid that, it's just prolonging the inevitable. And
yeah,
I will say this, as I am very much, going into more perimenopause years and that kind of stuff now, how you treat your hormones in your 20s is definitely going to show up in how you feel in your 40s and 50s. And unfortunately, we really do start to set the stage in our 20s and we don't realize it. Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I really wish teenage me would, I could go back to teenage me when they're like, oh yeah, because I was having like crazy amounts of blood loss, like passing out
Yes.
and horrible acne and cramping. Like, I'd have to miss school, which is why they put me on it. And me being a teenager, I didn't know. I was just like, oh, okay, this is gonna fix the problem. No
Right.
one ever sat me down and was like, here's some options.
Mhm.
Let's make a really good, like, let's protect your fertility health and all of this. No one ever explained anything to me. It was just, I was just given a pill and I was like, okay, like, I don't,
Okay.
yeah. And now years later, I'm paying the price. Like, when it came to a time where I wanted to explore having children, there's just not going to happen.
Not gonna happen. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I have the same experience. Like, I was on hormonal birth control when at like 15, probably because of
Mhm.
just bad period symptoms. Like, I had really bad like back pain when I would have my period, and just really bad cramping, and acne. And I did that because the doctor said to, and like I didn't know that I could ask questions or know that there was another option or solution to that. So
Or change your diet because, for
yeah,
instance, for
nothing
me,
about that was
I
said. It's just like
stopped having
take this
menstrual
pill.
cramps when I went dairy free. Like, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's so
And this
interesting.
definitely isn't like to like shit on doctors by any means. They're
No,
there
not at
for a
all.
reason. It's just there's our job is to inform people about it. It's
Yeah.
not, they got to get people in and out, they got to treat their symptoms. That's what their job is. They're doing their job,
Mhm.
but as like a health coach and stuff, like we just want the best for our athletes and for our clients. So, informing them of their options and how to do things is so much better. And I've had a few athletes too that have come off birth control, struggled a little bit, but we got him to a good point. Like now, like one girl I can think of, she's growing really, really well, still natural, but she's growing so much more. And then I have three lifestyle clients that are like postpartum, um, or like within that range too of like, or trying to start a family in the next year. Like I actually have a husband and wife couple that I train them both, and they want to start having a family. And so I'm like, girl, you got to come off that birth control, man, like if you want to do
Yeah.
it. And she's been having a heck of a time.
Start the healing while they are on the birth control for a good 2-3 months, and then come off of it, so that at least you've already started replenishing some vitamins and minerals. You've already started working, because birth control does a number on the microbiome, and we know how
Yep.
important the gut is in hormone synthesis and immune system and neurotransmitters and mental health and all of this. So if you get them started before they come off the birth control, then get them off the birth control, that does at the minimum decrease the negative side effects of coming off, and increases the possibility of recovering faster. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll definitely well, I think we've talked about our own personal experiences about birth control on previous episodes, so
Yeah,
maybe
I
don't
think
need to
so.
harp on that one as much. But just personally, don't do it.
Yeah.
14 years without a period, don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and finally got it back last year. So, but it
Mhm.
was from going the non-conventional method. So you do have to look at the homeopathic method as much as you can first. Deep dive into
Love
your whole
homeopathy.
history. Yep. Like start from the beginning. Like Kayla said, okay, when I was a preteen and put on birth control, well, sorry, you were still growing.
Yeah.
Like your body was not fully developed and they were putting you on steroids. That's why I do worry a lot about the current climate of kids that are put on steroids for
Other
personal
things.
reasons, for other things that are not conducive to their health.
Yeah.
So that's an area that they're going to see long-term negative effects from, particularly cognitive health.
Sadly.
Yep.
Yeah. I could go down through so many rabbit holes, but
I know.
this isn't the podcast for that. This isn't InfoWars.
I know. I like going down all the rabbit holes. I know,
I
like
too.
I
obviously
know we could go so many directions with this. Oh, there's our special guest,
Hi,
Dan.
Dan. He
Hi.
comes in at the perfect
Hi,
time.
Dan.
every time we film a podcast or record one, my husband comes home from work like right at the it's like
It's like, I don't know who Dan is. Hi, Dan.
my husband.
Okay, we're hitting about the hour mark. We were going to keep this at about an hour. So do you
Okay.
guys have any last minute
Well,
questions?
time flies when you're having fun. This has been
I
so much fun.
know. We'll have you on again because like we can learn so much. Like this was seriously fascinating and super helpful. So we all love talking about this stuff too. And
Yeah.
it's always fun to
I
learn.
unfortunately don't have any questions that would only span a minute or two. So that's why,
So
We're gonna go down
Write
rabbit
those down
holes
for
later.
next time.
yes.
right.
We can
And
totally
I'm
revisit this.
We should absolutely revisit, especially we could go into a whole other hour about your recent trip to Vegas and also, working alongside Austin Stout. So we would love to do
Yeah.
that
I'm gonna
for
take a picture of all of you pretty ladies.
yes.
Yeah.
I love
So
Austin.
we should definitely do that.
Yes. So
Yeah.
really funny, just a little quip there. Back when I very, 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 very first got into fitness, Austin had these whiteboard videos on his YouTube
Oh,
video back
yes.
then. It was mostly him standing in front of a whiteboard yelling at his cat. And
I watched those.
and so that is how I got through all of my cardio in my very first competition season. And so it has just been such a dream to work with him on a professional standpoint like this. And so I am more than happy to talk about all of that as well.
Yeah,
That's
I love
awesome.
Johnson. I have a consult with him
Good.
on May 5th, I think it is. But yeah,
Okay, awesome.
he works alongside my coach, and he just kind of just kind of as another set of eyes on like all my blood work, because I'm 7 weeks out right now, or a little bit less than. So it's just nice to be able to like
That's awesome.
2 eyes or 2 sets of eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
He's awesome.
Yep. I think we all have seen or met or worked with Austin in some way, shape, or form, and we all agree. Like, Austin's helped me a lot with a few of my cases as well, my own personal things too that I've had questions on, and he's always helpful to just respond.
He was my postpartum coach, just to throw that out there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. And so his whole team is great. But yeah, if you want to list just anywhere that people can find you or look up more resources or chat with you,
probably best is good old Instagram. It's innately nourished, so it's innately_nourished, and you can message me there, or say it's outside of business hours, you'll get a little message that pops up and tells you to email me. And or you can just email me. It's Erin@innatelynourished.com. But yeah, I would always be more than happy to help anybody if they have any questions about any of this.
Thank you so much, Erin. This has been, oh my
God.
God, we could talk about this for hours. I'm like,
I could nerd out on it all day long.
Oh yeah.
I thought of like 20 questions I wanted to ask, and I was like, oh, I can't ask.
Write them down. Write them down. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, write them down in our folder together, and then we'll do another episode with Erin at some point too.
That'd be fun.
I would love that.
All right. And I can't wait to hear about how the rest of your prep goes, Amanda.
Oh, thank you.
Where are you competing?
So the first show, still kind of figuring that out, but then the goal after that is Universe, assuming I qualify. But that's been kind of, Universe is like the big show we're shooting for. I didn't compete last year, so I have to qualify again.
Yeah.
And so gonna pick that show based off of the judges, so just to get some feedback into that show. But that's the plan right now. So it'll be middle for the first show, and then getting close.
Well, I can't wait to hear about it. Thank you guys
so
so much for having me on.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for coming on, Erin. We'll talk to you guys
soon.
later.
Bye.
Bye.